Okay, let's close our eyes for a moment. Okay, slowly open eyes again. Lesson 15, Svadhistana Chakra. Svadhistana Chakra we know as the water center. It has some very interesting characteristics. First of all, the meaning of the name. Sva means self. Svadhisthana Sana, meaning the seed of the self. And it sounds very mysterious, but in a practical sense, when harmony occurs in Svadhisthana Chakra, you connect with the true characteristics of yourself. Self with a capital S. Now, this sounds a little bit weird because you would think, I know who I am. I know myself. But we already came to the conclusion that the self that we think we know is based on indoctrination, is based on identification. Identification with our culture, our name, your family, very important in how you identify yourself. Your education, culture, if I haven't mentioned that yet, where you were born, the city in which you live, the communities, clubs that you are a member of, is very much underestimated how much that determines who we think we are. For example, I'm from Amsterdam. People from Amsterdam, they think people from Rotterdam, they're just peasants. So only Amsterdam counts in Holland. That's an identification. The local famous soccer club of Amsterdam is Ajax. The local soccer club of Rotterdam is PSV, I think. No, Feyenoord. Whenever they can, they find each other somewhere and they start fighting with each other. It's all based on identification. We are the best, you are just a bunch of peasants. And we do this all the time. In Korea, it's very important that you work at a big company. Hyundai, Samsung, LG, etc. Why? You feel good there. It's identification. So this is human. This is human behavior. And it is natural. Also, as a yogi, you will continue to do this. But now you know. And the next step is, as a natural result, this is not something that you consciously do. You do not sit on your cushion and say, today I'm going to study the self with a capital S. It's a natural process. You very naturally, more and more, it probably is already happening since you started this course, more and more start connecting with your true self, your heart's content. Little steps, but in the long term, you build a concrete idea of who you truly are, and more importantly, where you want to go with yourself in the future. It is the reason and the cause for big change in the long term. Moving away even from those identifications that have determined your life up until now, starting with birth. So this happens to every person who practices yoga correctly. It doesn't happen to every yoga practitioner because many yoga practitioners are not presented yoga in a proper way. Because there is too much movement, there is no sattva occurring in Svadhistana chakra, and so that process doesn't occur. But standing still, concentration, meditation very naturally leads to Svadhisthana, to the seat of the self, or soul consciousness, as it is also called. You see the mention of the word Atman. Atman is also a very interesting concept. There is an interesting anecdote related to the Buddha. We will talk about Atman in detail later on. I forgot exactly which lesson, but we will talk about it in detail later on. There's a lot of talk about Atman in the Buddhist world, in the temples. Nobody can actually properly explain what Atman really is, but it is very simple. Atman is the true self, the soul, and the characteristics that lie embedded in the soul. When we discuss the subtle anatomy of yoga, we will come to Atman. I will make a nice drawing on the board from your very basic existence in Muladhara Chakra all the way up to Atman and one more layer above that, which is the universe. So we will come to that. Okay, the subtle element I mentioned already is water. We refer to Svadhisthana chakra often as the water center. Like Muladhara chakra is the earth center and Manipura chakra is fire center. Okay? The lower emotions and desires are located there. The subtle vehicle of action, or the karmandriya of this chakra, is reproduction. Reproduction means conceiving babies. The subtle organ of perception, Jnanendriya, is taste. Taste in the mouth. So, you remember, the subtle organ of perception of Muladhara chakra was what? Smell. The subtle element we call samana prana. In Muladhara chakra that was appana prana, which is therefore responsible for everything related to reproduction. If you have trouble with menstruation, or if men have trouble with infertility, it is a matter of imbalance or lack of energy in Svadhisthana chakra. The color belonging to this chakra is orange, and the mantra is Vam. About conception or reproduction, in the past, when I started teaching yoga in Korea, after a couple of years, I was asked to do a prenatal class. There's a class with women who are already pregnant. Later, people started visiting me saying, Ron, I'm trying to get pregnant, but I can't. I'm getting treatment, it doesn't work. Now I heard that yoga can help. So I said, yes, yoga can help. But what you need to do is to stop thinking about wanting to get pregnant. If you want to get pregnant, you have to let that energy circulate. And as long as you are anxious to get pregnant, as long as you keep thinking and worrying about getting pregnant, you block the energy. So, 1, come to class, practice yoga. Number 2, do not have intercourse with your partner with the goal to get pregnant. Instead, when you have intercourse with your partner, enjoy it. And you know what? All those women that came to class with this question, they all became pregnant within 6 months. True. It's all a matter of energy. And we live in such a complicated world where we mentalize everything, rationalize everything. The power of rationalization is a good development, but it also blocks energy if we go too far in that process. And we do that all the time, we do that with everything. All our relations, therefore, are always based on tensions rather than heart, rather than love, compassion. There's always tension, there's always conflict. This explains why. The water center is also very interesting because water has a huge influence on how we are functioning. So, Svadhistana Chakra is responsible for menstruation. Water is influenced by the pull, the gravitational pull of the moon. In Holland in 1953, we had a flooding in the southwestern part of Holland. Huge flooding, thousands of people died, big disaster. You know that Holland is below the sea level for a large part. What happened that night that part was flooded is there was a full moon and there was a southwestern storm. The moon pulls the water up. So you have the ebb and the flow of the sea, the ocean. When the moon is full, flow is higher than normal. In combination with a strong southwestern storm, the water was pushed over the dikes and huge part was flooded. Why am I telling you this story? It indicates how strong the influence is of water on the moon. The opposite. How strong the influence is of the moon on the water. A human being exists for more than 60% out of water. And without you knowing it, the moon influences your emotional condition. There is a word we use in English, but it's actually Latin. It's lunatic. Lunatic means that you are crazy. But what does the word really mean? Luna means moon. And tic means being hit. So lunatic literally means you're being hit by the moon. Ancient people were very connected with nature, and they clearly noticed when it was full moon that certain people behaved differently. Sometimes emotionally very unstable, even crazy. So you were a lunatic. Another interesting fact is that most women, if they do not use birth control pill, they have their menstruation around the full moon. Influenced by the moon on Svadhistana Chakra. So that influence is very real, it's very strong, but we do not really, if we are not aware of it, we do not notice it. Many suicides, by the way, occur around the full moon also. Now we live in the time of the coronavirus, which also shows activity or imbalance, disharmony, in Svadhisthana Chakra. It's all the people going to the supermarket and buying 5 years worth of toilet paper. It's not the toilet paper, I'm just joking, but it's an indication. That is one of the things that really stood out. But not only the toilet paper shelves were empty, the freezers were empty, all the conserved food in cans was empty. In Korea, it didn't really happen. But in most other countries that are dealing with the coronavirus crisis, hoarding was a big problem. Maybe still is. I think things have leveled out a bit. But hoarding is caused by disharmony in Svadhisthana Chakra. You feel unsafe, you feel unstable, you don't know what the future will bring. There is a disease and you don't know whether you're going to get it, you don't know whether the world still exists. That is a very deep instinct inside you, in combination of course with Muladhara Chakra. Saving, preparing for a future, in Korea you call it Chetek, buying a house, creating a stable foundation to build your life upon, calculating 40, 50, 60 years ahead. That is a characteristic also of Svadhisthana Chakra. It gives stability. It gives harmony, sattva, harmony between yin and yang energies. Every human being instinctively wants this, not only wants this, needs this. And that is why you see that kind of behavior of saving, of preparing for the future, and also in case of turmoil, hoarding. The developmental stage of this chakra is between 8 and 14 years old. Remember, Muladhara Chakra was from birth to the age of 7, where stability is most important, where you develop social mindedness. Basically, lay the foundation for the development into a stable, mature adult, capable of social relationships, etc. Here, you build on that, and between the age of 8 and 14, you discover yourself in relation to the opposite sex. Or you discover that you are attracted to the same sex, that is also possible, but it is the age in which you discover your sexuality. So not the instinctive sexuality, the animal sexuality of Muladhara Chakra, but you discover or develop a sense of romanticism. You become attracted. It is the age in which you have a puppy love. Putsara, you call that in Korean? Punsara? In English you call it puppy love. In Dutch we call it kaaf. You know kaaf? 한국말로 뭐예요? kaaf? 소양이? 송아지? 송아지 사람. We call it in Dutch. So every country has its own word for it. Everybody remembers their puppy love, I think. Right. I do. It was a disaster. No, it's a time where the world is upside down, and if you think back to it, it's a wonderful time, in spite of all the turmoil That is part of it. Interesting is that if you look at the education system, in Korea still, schools, some schools, not all, it's getting less and less, but schools still separate boys and girls. So that happened in all other countries around the world. It's still happening here and there. In Holland it does not happen anymore, but when my mom was young, there were also still boys schools and girls schools. The reason why teachers do that is to avoid putsara, to avoid puppy love. Because children who fall in love at that young age, they become very dreamy and they are not interested in school anymore. So what educators want, what the government wants, is students who focus on their study and therefore contribute to society when they get older, when they're adult. But they try to prevent you from falling in love. Doesn't work, of course. It actually leads to certain mishaps. That energy is there, the hormones are there, so it will find a way out anyway, and often in a distorted way. So governments abandon the system of separating young people, boys and girls. In Korea also, there are not so many schools left anymore, I think. Or are there still many where boys and girls are separated? It's much less than before, right? Yeah. It's just against nature to go against that development. Last week, remember, I mentioned that when you spread the feet in an exercise, standing still, you stimulate Muladhara Chakra. When you bend at the hips, you stimulate Svadhistana Chakra. And if you add to that one or both legs bent, like in the triangle pose, the extended triangle pose, or the warrior pose where you bend one leg, but not only one leg is bent, the feet are spread, and you use the hips, you also stimulate Manipura Chakra. So Svadhisthana Chakra is harmonized, stimulated energy circulation, and harmonized sattva occurring as a result of bending the hips, tilting the pelvis. I think I mentioned it before, fleetingly, that people who have issues in Svadhisthana Chakra, they're often very stiff in the hips. Vice versa, or on the other hand, when you have issues in Svadhisthana Chakra, you practice yoga and repeatedly bending and tilting the hips, at the hips, it will gradually solve the issues that you have there, the blockage that you have there. That is why yoga inherently is a practice of healing, self-healing. When you practice yoga regularly, you less and less need interference from a doctor. Even worse, doctors don't like you as a patient. Because when you go to a doctor, you have some kind of issue, you have already contemplated on what is the matter with you. So when you go to the doctor will say, I think this is wrong with you. And you will say, no, I don't think so. I think something else is the matter with you. And because doctors also have an ego, they don't like that you know better than they do. So you have to be a little bit diplomatic, don't be arrogant, be careful, because sometimes you may need the doctor in case something serious happens, so you don't really want them to not like you. Okay. Sattva characteristics. This is also very interesting. People who have this chakra well balanced, meaning that there is sattva, characteristically show graceful and smooth movements and also emotional maturity, flexibility, and ability to accommodate changes. Let's have a look at the next. Rajas characteristics: easily addicted, very emotional, emotionally dependent and attached. Do you recognize this? I do. You see these Rajas characteristics especially in artists. Real artists. There are many fake artists who just do something that they are being told by their managers just to make money. But there are real artists, like Van Gogh, but also like, what's the name of this famous female singer that died young, 27, 28? It's not Adele.
Amy Winehouse?
Yes, Amy Winehouse. Interesting name, Winehouse. Talking about addictions. No, Amy Winehouse. Brilliant as an artist, but so unstable, so tragic, her life. So much upheaval, abuse, addiction. That's very typical for real artists. It's a Rajas characteristic in Svadhistana Chakra. Without Rajas in Svadhistana Chakra, they wouldn't be an artist in the first place. So it is an inherent problem that most artists are dealing with. Real artists. Why? Creativity is fueled by passion. Passion means that there is a huge ball of energy in Svadhisthana Chakra. So you pay a price for your artistic qualities. If you read about Van Gogh, he was very depressed. He cut off one ear. Amy Winehouse is just a perfect example, but many also modern artists, they don't live up until old age. Kurt Cobain, young guy from a very popular band, also died very young. But also Bob Marley, Bruce Lee, people with huge influence still many years after their death. Those people were not only cool, but they stand out, or they stood out because of their incredible passion and creativity. They changed the world. So now we come to a very interesting aspect, because considering it from this point of view, we live in a very poor society where we are told to oppress our emotions. Because when you are emotional, what are you being told? You are exaggerating. You are emotionally unstable. You might need therapy or a psychologist. Wrong. The energy that is responsible for those emotions can be put to very good use in your development as a human being. If it is oppressed, life becomes very gray and dull. It is the reason or the cause why many people are not happy in life. Life is relatively comfortable. In Korea, in Europe, in America, there are still some countries where people are poor and struggling. But we're relatively well off. We have a roof over our head. We're safe, relatively. We can eat what we want, we can meet who we want. And yet many people have a hole in their heart. Many people suffer from depression. Many people, I've talked with people who are very pessimistic about life. Very sad to hear people say, well, you know, I wouldn't mind if I die today because I really don't care much about my future. And it's all in Svadhistana Chakra. Growing up from birth, every time when you express yourself, being told to control yourself, kills the spirit. Literally kills the spirit. For me, many years of experience have shown that it is the spirit that makes life worthwhile. It's not money, it's not possession, it is spirit. With spirit, you can overcome anything. But if you have everything but no spirit, life is not worth to be lived for many people. So Freud, Carl Jung, had a very nice quote about this. Carl Jung said, emotion is the chief source of all becoming conscious. There can be no transforming of darkness into light and apathy into movement without emotion. Let's repeat that. Emotion is the chief source of all becoming conscious. We are here practicing a very ancient science that is designed to lead to consciousness. Now we find out that this is not possible without emotion. It means we have to start allowing emotion, not in an uncontrolled way, because that wreaks havoc. It leads to conflict. So next time when you have a conflict with a parent or a friend or a neighbor, do not think that this is a justification for starting to fight and scream and make a huge issue. It is not, because there is also the law of karma that says that action leads to reaction. So misery is always starting with our own actions. But do not deny or ignore emotion. When there is a conflict, instead of having a conflict, a physical or verbal fight, altercation, try to use that energy, that emotion, to contemplate, to gain insight in what is happening. Because that is what happens if you canalize that energy. So move away from the conflict, make a walk in the park or go to your room. Just withdraw yourself away from the heat. And just close your eyes for a moment and allow the energy to settle down. That energy will then rise up and fuel your consciousness, giving you very deep insight in what is happening. As a result of that, you grow enormously. So emotion is the chief source of all becoming conscious. There can be no transforming of darkness into light. Transforming of darkness into light, that is turning ignorance into wisdom. Many people live in darkness. We have degrees. We have 20 years of education behind us. We think we are very intelligent. Theoretically, yes. We have gathered a lot of knowledge. But it's very possible that you have a lot of knowledge while still living in the dark. Light, there is enlightenment. Yoga leads to enlightenment. Jesus Christ had a light around his head, a halo. This is about energy rising up, fueling your Ajna chakra and your crown chakra. Like I said before, you can be very intelligent, very well educated, and still be stupid, ignorant. You can be uneducated, not being able to even write your own name, and possess wisdom. Here you see what makes the difference. If you look at Einstein, if you look at Galileo and other people that really stand out in history, who either provided us with very deep insight, scientific insight, insight in the universe, or provided us with revolutionary inventions, revolutionary technology. You look at those people, they were not only very highly educated, they were also very spiritual and emotional. The same like artists. That is where genius comes from. Genius does not come from a study at Harvard. It can help, but without emotion, without this energy that turns darkness into light, genius will not come. But if you combine your study, your degrees, with being yourself and allowing yourself to express yourself, being a sensible and sensitive human being, that is when genius occurs. And the final phrase is turning apathy into movement. Apathy is darkness. Apathy is many people are suffering from. Remember Yubin, the girl whose father wanted her to be a ski star? If she engaged in doing what her dad told her to do, she became apathetic. Is that the right word? Apathetic. Lethargic. All her energy died, and she would just like a robot go through the motion just because her dad told her to, but she hated it. But the moment she would think about something she really liked, which I noticed was school, going to school, she would completely transform. She would change from darkness into light, become enthusiastic, start dancing in the street. Just amazing. That is this. That is what this is about. So when you kill your emotions, you kill your spirit, you kill yourself. Allow emotions, but control them. This is the reason why in society, growing up, we are told to control our emotions, to oppress them, to deny them. Why? Because it leads to turmoil. It leads to disharmony, conflict. But the medicine we are given is worse than the original disease or the symptom, the emotion. Because oppression eventually leads to distorted ways of expressing ourselves. Mass murderers, rapists, people who commit the most horrible crimes. Their crimes, their inhuman behavior can all be traced back to denied, oppressed emotion. So if it is oppressed, it's still there. It doesn't mean that it goes away. So it becomes oppressed, and it will find another way to manifest, uncontrolled. I would say, if you're sad, just be sad. If you're angry, just be angry. But do it in a conscious way. Do not let it make you break things or hurt people, because that is not the solution. Try to canalize your emotion towards constructive and positive. Now, that may sound difficult, but your yoga practice will automatically lead to that, because you become more and more contemplative. Next time when you are hit by emotion, instead of impulsively reacting, which we will study after lunch basically with Manipura Chakra, instead of impulsively reacting, you will be curious to find out what is going on inside you and why this is happening and what has caused it, who possibly has caused it or is involved in all of this. So you become kind of a smart puzzler. Puzzling, putting pieces of a puzzle together, you become a person who naturally connects the dots, who develops insight based upon contemplation. And that is when you start transforming conflict into growth. That is when you start transforming the negative into positive. Anything that happens that we perceive as negative, if you approach that in the way that we are here discussing, always becomes a positive. So we have to change the way that we look at negative things. The reason why we look at things in a negative way is because of ego. Ego makes us identify with the misery and we drown ourselves in it. That is a natural tendency. It's almost masochistic that we subconsciously enjoy the suffering, the misery. Through ego, we identify with the misery. As a yogi, you start seeing that. And you will not allow it to happen anymore. It will hit you, but you quickly regain yourself and you will say, hey, what is happening here and why? And what did I do that I'm finding myself in this situation? So any negative thing always turns into positive. If only because you are capable of drawing conclusions. If only because as a result of that you grow and develop. Because that's all it is. Misery in life, failure, conflict is only a teacher if we look at it in the proper way. If we don't know how to look at it, it just makes us suffer without a goal other than suffering. Can you see that? I don't know if I've told you this story. I usually do in the course. When I was a child, I was full of energy, very playful, enthusiastic, always outside, climbing trees, going onto the rooftops of small buildings and what have you, cycling around the neighborhood. But then at the age of 12, 13, I became dark and depressed, very unhappy. Things happened at that time. It's a vulnerable age. Several things happened at the same time. So things went off the rails for the next couple of years to come. At the age of 16, I came to the point that I asked myself, if not this, then what do I want? I was depressed, I was unhappy. I was basically disconnected. I lost that little boy that was always happy and playful and enthusiastic. So I asked myself, so what do you want? If not this, misery, then what do you want? I was desperate to change, but didn't know what to do or how. The answer to that question was very simple. I just want to be happy again. So the next question then came to me, how do you do that? The answer to that was also very simple. Just be yourself. Including when you're sad, allow yourself to cry. When you're angry, allow yourself your anger. But just be yourself again. In an unguarded moment of contemplation, I just realized that the happiness of that little boy was gone. And the only way to be happy again is to simply go back to that. And what was the difference? As that little boy, I was just myself, without consciousness. And that dark, depressed teenager had become totally lost, disconnected, off the rails. So very simple. What do you want? Happy. How do you do that? Just be yourself. And ever since then, that is what I have been doing in my life, pursuing in my life. That is why I totally diverted away from what my family was doing, finding my own way. It eventually led me to come to Korea. That is this. In my mid-20s, I became bald. I started becoming bald. And I know exactly why. Every time my spirit dies, my health deteriorates. And it started with losing hair. So these things happen to teach you. And as a yoga teacher, it has given me many deep insights that I then try to pass on to you. How do you lose your hair? How does your spirit die? For me, I try to be normal. Not being myself, I was busy doing that, but then the pressure from society kind of made me take steps to become normal. I started a full-time job under pressure, kind of. I came into a relationship where I didn't really want to be. So I started drinking beer and losing my hair. And then I realized I have to get back on my track. I have to get back on my path. And what was that? Being myself had led me to yoga. It had led me to martial arts, Aikido. So that is when I said, I have to get back to my old plan to go to Korea. So the relationship in a non-violent way, in a very harmonious way, ended. It took years basically to come to the point, but ended without conflict. And within 2 years I was in Korea, never to leave anymore. But it's not that simple, because in Korea I lost the rest of my hair. My spirit died again. I came here full of enthusiasm and started teaching yoga, but I ended in a relationship, karmic relationship, that killed my spirit again. So that also took many years to end. Now I have 2 dogs. But my hair doesn't grow back. I tried very hard, but spirit dies. That is, it sounds like a fairy tale or a fantasy, but you and I are all the same. When you're enthusiastic, when you feel good, when you feel happy, when you wake up and throughout the day, that is when your energy is here. But there are so many aspects of our life that bring that energy down, that make us dark. Most people do not notice, do not understand, so there is no control. So it is circumstances that determine our well-being. As a yogi, you can learn to see the condition that you are in. And when you can see it, you can gradually take control. So my life, ever since 16, since I made that conclusion, has always been about gradually taking more control. But it is a path that goes up and down. So you fly very high, but sometimes you fall very low. That is this. That is what Carl Jung means. I could have forced myself to stay in that job, that full-time job, and build a future based on material aspects. Buy a house, start a family, think about the future when you retire, etc. But that would have been possible, like many people do. But I'm one of these people with lots of energy in Svadhistana Chakra. So it's either dark or it's very light. And because I don't like that darkness, I always try to understand what is happening with me and find my way back onto that path where the spirit is stimulated. Last year I took a 1-year break before this course because the spirit was not there again. I lost my motivation, my inspiration. I couldn't sit here anymore and teach with enthusiasm about what yoga was about. It became very boring. So I decided to take a break. Actually, I thought I'm never going to teach yoga anymore. It's just certain developments took place. I had a midlife crisis as a man. Everybody goes through that. It didn't work anymore. If at that point you just continue doing what you do, you're lying to yourself, you're stealing to yourself, you're being violent to yourself, you break all the yamas and the niyamas. So that was a very scary year. But I needed that break and the dogs coming into my life to become inspired again. Inspired. You know what inspired means? It's also from Latin. It comes from in spiritus. In the spirit. When you are inspired, you are in the spirit. If there is no energy here, all you can do is just read from the paper. Yeah, the sattva and rajas and tamas. With no color, with nothing. No creativity. Now that is what this last paragraph is about. And it is something that we should not deny ourselves. The tragedy is that allowing yourself emotion does come with instability. That is why parents and teachers and the government tell you that you should ignore emotions, oppress emotions. Our answer is no, don't, because it's worse. The cure is worse than the symptom, than the disease. But be aware and try to canalize it. There are also artists who have overcome their instability and live to very old age. Picasso is one of them. A brilliant artist, very spiritual, living like a hermit. But he became older than 90. The Rolling Stones is a great example too. You know the Rolling Stones? Those people, you know, they had all the Rajas characteristics here. Addiction, tragic relationships and what have you. Now they're in their 70s and they're still rocking. One or two of them died, but the lead singer, what's his name again?
Mick Jagger.
Yeah, Mick Jagger. He's a grandfather. He's close to his 80s, I think. He's still rocking on stage. I think they should retire. But as an example of people who have taken control, their creativity made them brilliant musicians, but many of those musicians die in their 30s, 40s. In very tragic ways. Either suicide, or overdose of drugs, or too much alcohol, and always involving very tragic relationships, about love relationships. Very unstable. But if you can canalize that, you start not only using your creativity to grow and develop, but you create a stable life for yourself that you can enjoy without all the tragedy, without all the abuse and addictions and what have you. You understand a little bit the significance of Svadhistana Chakra? The Manipura Chakra will build on this, is very interesting also. Because without Manipura Chakra, nothing happens. Okay, questions?
Ron,
Yeah?
I wonder if someone in sattva state, that means
Is someone is?
someone in sattva state,
Yeah.
that means all 7 chakras are in sattva, or their upper chakras are more important, more powerful. So regardless of any other lower chakras. So
When there is chakra, when there is sattva, when Shiva and Shakti are in harmony, energy naturally starts to rise up, fueling Ajna Chakra and the Crown Chakra. When the Crown Chakra is in sattva, all the chakras below are also in sattva.
So they are more powerful. Ajna chakra is the most powerful.
Ajna Chakra can overrule the lower chakras. And that sounds cryptical, but it is mind over matter. The mistake that we make in our modern societies is that we interpret mind over matter in a distorted way. We put into practice mind over matter not as a form of control based on consciousness. We put it into practice by ignoring and denying what is happening in the lower chakras. And that leads to distorted behavior. So, naturally, when there is no harmony, which is the natural condition, there's always fluctuation between the levels of tamas and rajas, sattva and Shiva and Shakti, energy condenses toward the bottom. When there is stability, sattva, energy starts to rise up, leading to development of intellect and intuition. With yoga, we try to create such a condition in a controlled way. That means regardless of the circumstances. But your government, your school, even your parents try to create such an environment in a superficial way. A government has an army and a police force to create stability on a society level. In school, Maybe sometimes you read a story about something that happens in school. A child that has been violent, abusive, and there's always the same pattern. The leaders of the school, the headmaster, the teachers, they always deny that something happened. You know why they do that? They just want to keep peace. Now you know why. So when children are being bullied in school, or some students have stolen something, or sometimes there is sexual abuse going on, the school always tries to put it under the mat. They always try to hide it. They don't want other children to be disturbed by it because of this. When you don't understand that, you get angry. Why are they denying? Why are they saying nothing happened? Why? But it is understandable from this point of view. They want other children not to become the victim of one thing that happened. Because it leads to disturbance and disruption, meaning that the other children, their energy will fall down, and intellectually they will not perform as well as they could be. It also explains why in the past temples and monasteries were always far away in the mountains, far away from every other activity in society. The situation created is pure sattva. So in the past, education, learning only happened in those kind of places. Temples and monasteries. Hospitals also. Hospitals, maybe not in Seoul or Amsterdam, but where there is enough space, hospitals, sanatoriums, they're always far away from the traffic and the noise and the disturbance. Why? Sattva leads to healing. The people who are sick, they heal best and fastest in a totally sterile, quiet environment. That is why typically nurses and doctors wear shoes with rubber soles. So when they walk, you don't hear their footsteps. In Holland, still like this. Hospitals are very quiet, and you're being asked to stay quiet. Don't speak loud, don't use your mobile phone. It disturbs the healing process of the patient. If you understand sattva in a practical way, everything starts making sense. It also means that for us, as human beings, to thrive, we need to create sattva in our lives. The Hatha Yoga Pradipika will go into that in the first chapter, so we will read about that in a couple of weeks. But nothing is static. The way that we talk about it here, it seems like you can turn on a switch. You practice yoga every day and you will be in perfect sattva. It doesn't work like that. Because energy is very dynamic and very fickle. And the more energy you have, ironically, the more unstable you will be. The more important it is that you try to control it and canalize it. You do that with study, you do that with meditation. Yes? Thomas?
Ron, when you talk about directing the energy of emotions in a positive direction, or trying to avoid creating negative karma with her, is that the purpose of the yamas?
Yeah, the purpose of the yamas is to make you conscious of your tendency to act and react in certain ways given certain circumstances. So normal human life is based on action and reaction. Not allowing for any stability because there's always something going on. Especially if you look at how life was 1,000 years ago. Buddhism also goes out from the point of view that life is a valley of tears. Life is suffering. When you die, then you will be liberated. Yoga says no. You don't have to wait until you die. You can liberate yourself now. But to do so, you must understand a couple of things. You must understand that when you act in a violent way, it will bounce back on you and create more disharmony, more turmoil. When you lie, people will lose faith in you and will start distrusting you, etc. So when you become aware of that, simply by studying these subjects, you then start recognizing it in your daily life. Because it's not a matter of being perfect, it's a matter of understanding human nature. It's human nature that when somebody is rude to you, you have a tendency to react in a violent way. But now you start seeing that, yes, indeed, if I allow my impulse to react, to just go free, it leads to more misery. The conflict becomes bigger than if I recognize the tendency, the urge, and not give in to it. So what we talked about here also is about oppressing or controlling. It can give the mistaken impression that when somebody is rude to you, you feel an emotion. So based on what we learned today, it means that I should fight back. No. That is exactly the problem. You are consciously aware of what is happening, and you then decide not to give in to your tendency to fight back. At first sight, it may look stupid. I have to stand up for myself. I have to protect myself. No. The thing is that if you control yourself, a little bit later, you look back at what happened and you get an enormous sense of self-respect, an enormous sense of pride. That is your reward. Why? Because you were able to prevent worse based on controlling your instinct, your emotion. So it feels incredibly good if you're able to do that. Maybe it's necessary temporarily that you allow your emotions to reign free, but then you must start seeing, you must start becoming aware of the increased suffering that it causes, the increased conflict that results from it. And then very naturally, you will start using your insights to canalize that energy, to gradually start controlling yourself. Not fighting back is not a weakness. Many people think you are maybe even being taught by your society or your parents that you must protect yourself, you must stand up for yourself, you must fight back. So you fight back and you end up in a deeper quagmire, a deeper conflict. So you think, yes, but I needed to stand up for myself. No, standing up for yourself means be wise. If you end up in a conflict where you need to protect yourself, you do not do it by lowering yourself to the level where those people are that you need to protect yourself from. Because then you create a vicious cycle. Tit for tat, we call that in English. You try, like a general, to fight the battle in a smart way, by not having to fight. And that may mean that you have to change the circumstances. You control yourself, or you try to avoid being in that situation. That's not easy, because sometimes, or most of the times, this involves important issues in life, like a job. You work in a company and you have a big conflict with your manager or a co-worker. And that co-worker just seems to enjoy poking you all the time, because they enjoy that you get angry or upset. So you must rise above that. And if it is untenable, maybe you have to prepare, not in an emotional bout of anger or something, that you quit your job, but very smartly prepare to change the situation. So prepare before you take action. That is your power. Maybe you get educated and you become the boss or the manager. Or it might lead you to another job, another career, maybe even something totally different. But do it smartly, do it wisely, gradually. That means gradually. Don't take any rash steps or actions. That always leads to making things worse. Do not compare yourself with other people who on the surface seem to be so smart with their aggression and seem to achieve and get everything they want with their aggression. Because you don't want to exchange with them. You're only seeing the material side of what they do and how they do it, but their suffering, without them even knowing it, is tremendous. Their instability and insecurity is tremendous. You wouldn't want to exchange with those people. Better be humble and follow your own path. Yes, Shia?
Building on to your answer, like how do you draw the line between oppressing and controlling? Because like, say you're in a situation where you feel like, oh, I shouldn't lash out, like I should control myself, but if that continues and continues, it gets to the point where you are not sure whether you're actually oppressing yourself or is it a right way of control. So how do you like draw the line?
That is a matter of the circumstances that you are in, the people that are involved in it, and I guess it's a matter of trial and error also. You try to control yourself, there comes a point that you think, now I'm at the point that I should not accept this anymore. So, experiment. Get angry, lash out. But see what happens as a result of that. And I'm almost 100% certain that in every case that you allow yourself to lash out, you always regret afterwards. You always think later on, I should have done this differently. I wish I would have said this or that, or I wish I would have not lashed out or acted in this way. Remember what I said just before is when you manage to control yourself, when you succeed, it leads to a sense of pride, self-confidence, self-respect. The opposite is also true. Every time we lose control, we feel very bad afterwards. We lose our self-respect. We lose. That is if your heart is in the right place. There are, of course, people who enjoy lashing out and are very proud of their power to do so. But those people have no heart. You said something like, if something happens again and again and again, that means you have to ask yourself, why is it happening? And why am I in this situation? And what can I do in a smart way to change it? Smart way means you carefully prepare. You carefully start planning. And it can take years, sometimes, to change such a particular situation. Especially when it's about a job, or a relationship, family, or those kind of things. It can take many years. But you try to do it as harmoniously as possible, because not for their sake, for your own sake. They will benefit from your approach too, but that is not your concern. Your concern is how does it affect you? And you want to be as happy as you can on a daily basis, in spite of the circumstances you are in, conflicts you are dealing with. And the only way to change that without causing huge conflict or more violence or being very unhappy is by very carefully planning, step by step, how to get out of such a situation. And it requires something that most people don't have. That's patience. But patience is a quality of a yogi. Why? Because vision, your ability to see the future, that is one of the qualities that all of you develop as a result of your yoga practice. And when you can see that if you plan carefully, step by step, it will lead to a point where you want to be, it's not so difficult anymore to be patient. You will realize that real change can take 30, 40 years. Then you think, oh, so long? Then I'm not interested anymore. Then I tell you, that's all that life is about. Life is about carving out your own place, building your own world, your own reality. And that means very gradually getting rid of all the other elements that disturb you. And in case of family, because the attachment is so big, it is taking many years. In case of a job, because it gives you stability and security, pays your bills and your enjoyment and what have you, it takes time. If it's about a relationship you are in, there are many factors that will determine. If there are children in the relationship, the first priority is the children. You do not want the children to become victim of the disharmony you have with your partner, if you can avoid it. If there's no other way, then there's no other way. Then you do what you can to limit the damage as much as possible. But everything, if you do it without the least disruption possible, everything takes time. When our Hapkido teacher left from Amsterdam, my Hapkido friends came to Korea within 1 year. And I was jealous of them. I should have been here before them. I was the most fanatic student of my Hapkido teacher. I drove him around town and around the country, wherever he wanted to go. Dropped him off at the Korean restaurant around the corner every time, twice a day. I was very dedicated. But they came here within 1 year. But some returned after 4 months, others returned after 6 months, 8 months, and only one person succeeded to stay here for 1 year. So they all came back and they all went back to their old life. It took me 9 years to come here, but I did what I'm telling you to do. Prepare, step by step. 23 years later, I'm still here. Yeah, carry on.
It is quite a personal question. Can you share with us your own reality you want to build up? Like yours, just right before you said that life is building on our own reality. So if you are okay, can you share with us your own
That's what I'm doing now. The reality that I built is doing what I do now. I'm 56 years old. Compare me with other people 56 years old and you will not see a comparison. The difference is energy. The difference is spirit. People my age usually look very old. And they move very old and they talk very old. I feel passionate, I feel youthful. And that's actually what yoga promises. But it doesn't come from a few exercises. It comes from the way that you live your life. So I'm kind of like an artist. And I wish that at this age I wouldn't have to be unstable anymore. But it's part of my life. So the reality that I built, that is what I'm doing now. This is what I love to do. That is why after that, taking a break for 1 year, in which I really believed I'm never going to teach yoga anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to back to teaching yoga. I thought I was a lousy yoga teacher. Because I'm not a yoga teacher. I'm wrong. Even that I'm not. But in a very natural way, things move and evolve. And it brought me here, Yoga by Jan. I received a cacao talk. That was in November maybe, or even December, and I thought I am not going to have a class this February. But then I dragged myself here to have a look. I thought it's the universe. I didn't push anything, I didn't move anything, it just happened. So I came here, and while I was walking in the street, I thought, it's probably nothing, because most studios are too small. Most yoga studios are half this size. And that's too small for my purpose. So I'm kind of skeptical. Same way when I was recruited for this huge gym in Yoido, that I told this guy all the time, hey, I'm not interested, I don't want to work with Korean businessmen. So I came here and I opened the door and I thought, wow! The universe really wants me to start again. And the dogs had become stable. It was just time. The dots connect in a natural way, no effort. Actually, the owner sent me a text message. He said, Ron, you want to take over the studio? I thought, oh, the universe is helping me again. Then I thought, wait a minute. Wait a minute. All studios are suffering now. Stupid to take a studio now. So I talked with a couple of people who are involved in the yoga business on a big scale, and the story is the same. They all say the same. We are running our studios, but there's no income. The members that we have, they don't extend their membership. And new members don't come. So while we have to pay salaries and rent, there's no income. So Ron, don't. Just wait. If you wait, there will be many studios empty. And you won't have to pay for interior or cornium or so, wait. So okay, but I want to have this studio. No. You know, in that case, I'm very simple. I'm a dreamer. I want to have it. So other people need to bring me down to earth and say, Ron, don't. It's not a good time. The next step is that there will be a pockhook or a telephone ringing, and something better will come. Always. If you're patient, something better will come. So this coronavirus situation really is not, it's very uncertain. It can flare up again. All small businesses that start again soon, because Korea now the infection rate is very low, very soon things will start becoming active again, but it can flare up again. I don't want to have a studio where it's such a situation because it's really bad. Many small businesses go bankrupt now at this moment. Not only in Korea, all over Europe and America, it's really bad. It's a huge, actually economically huge disaster taking place. You have no idea of unless you have your own business. So, actually I'm blessed that I don't have a studio. Mr. Han, please don't watch this video. Mr. Han is the owner. Yeah, so yeah, that is, I don't know if I answered your question. For me, I have basically created that reality I was looking for. And of course, there's always room for improvement. My next step is, because, like I said, I feel kind of getting, I'm getting old and thinking that at this age, shouldn't have to live with instability and uncertainty. I've always done that because of my choices. That year that I took a break, I made some very important decisions, conclusions. One of them is that I need to be having my own studio, because that creates stability. And the story of the dogs, that people declared me crazy. But they give me inspiration. They make me realize important things in life. They are my guide, believe it or not. It's how you see it. Most people will say, oh no, somebody else should take care of this. Let the dog shelter take care of this, or let the police take care of this. For a yogi, you see ahead of you, you see opportunity, you see the dots connecting. Like I said before, you become a puzzler, you become a very skillful puzzler. You see the connections. Yes, it's almost a full-time job, taking care of those dogs. But that's not the point. The point is it gives purpose again, it gives joy. Not only that, it inspires me to move forward again and keep going on that path. That is not easy, but that is what makes life wonderful and worth to be lived. Let's take a break. I talk too much. 5 minutes?